Tears, the silent language of the soul. Tears are often seen as simple expressions of emotion, a fleeting reaction to joy, sorrow, or even a speck of dust in the eye. Yet these tiny droplets carry a profound significance that transcends mere biology. They are a universal language, a silent symphony that plays out the deepest parts of the human experience. Whether in moments of uncontainable joy, gut-wrenching grief, or quiet reflection, tears speak a language that words often fail to capture. Throughout history, tears have been a subject of fascination and mystery. Ancient civilizations saw them as divine messages, poets and artists have celebrated their beauty, and modern science has uncovered the intricate biological processes behind them. But what truly makes tears extraordinary is their multifaceted nature. They are at once a physical response, a psychological release, and a cultural symbol. In this journey through the world of tears, we will uncover the layers of meaning behind this simple yet complex phenomenon. From the biological evolution that has shaped our ability to cry, to the psychological and cultural factors that dictate when and how we shed tears, we will explore the many dimensions of this human experience. By delving into scientific discoveries, historical accounts, and cultural narratives, we will see that tears are far more than just drops of saline. They are a window into the human soul. 1. The evolution of tears, a biological perspective. Human versus animal tears. Explore differences and similarities between human tears and animal tear-like behaviors. Include findings on how animals like elephants and primates exhibit tearful behaviors, providing insight into the evolution of empathy and social bonding. Biological mechanisms. Detail the anatomy of the lacrimal system and the process of tear production. Include information on different types of tears, basal, reflex, and emotional, and their specific functions and compositions. Hormonal influence. Discuss the role of hormones like prolactin, adrenaline, and cortisol in the production of tears. Include studies on how hormonal fluctuations can affect tear production and emotional crying, especially in relation to gender differences. 2. Gender and crying, a cultural and biological perspective. Scientific studies. Include research studies that show how men and women differ in their crying frequency and intensity. Discuss the influence of hormones, brain structure, and societal conditioning. Cultural case studies. Provide examples of different cultural attitudes toward crying, such as the Japanese concept of hanashi, emotional release, and the Stoic philosophy in ancient Rome that discouraged the display of emotions. Media influence. Examine how modern media portrays crying and its impact on gender perceptions. Discuss how movies, TV shows, and advertisements influence societal norms around who is allowed to cry and in what circumstances. 3. The psychology of tears, a deeper dive. Emotional triggers. Explore in detail the various emotional triggers for crying, such as grief, joy, frustration, and empathy. Include psychological theories on why certain emotions lead to tears. Therapeutic aspects. Discuss the role of crying in psychotherapy and mental health treatment. Include examples of therapeutic practices, such as crying therapy in Japan, and the benefits of emotional release in psychological healing. Studies on stress relief. Present findings from scientific studies that show how crying can reduce stress and promote emotional well-being. Include the physiological changes that occur during and after crying, such as the release of endorphins and oxytocin. 4. Crying across cultures, a global perspective. Anthropological insights provide an in-depth analysis of how different cultures view crying. Include examples from indigenous tribes, such as the crying rituals of the Yanomami people in the Amazon and the mourning practices of the Toraga in Indonesia. Religious and spiritual perspectives. Discuss the role of tears in religious and spiritual practices across the world. Include examples from Hinduism, where tears are seen as an offering to the gods, and Sufism, where crying is considered a path to spiritual purification. Cultural evolution. Analyze how the perception of crying has evolved in different cultures over time. Discuss how modernization and globalization have influenced attitudes towards emotional expression, particularly in Eastern versus Western cultures. 5. The science of tears, a deeper dive. Biochemical composition. Detail the different components of tears and their functions. Include recent research on how emotional tears contain higher levels of proteins like prolactin, adrenocorticotropic hormone, and leucine and kephalin, which may explain their unique role in emotional regulation. Neuroscientific research. Explore how recent advancements in neuroscience have enhanced our understanding of the brain's role in crying. Discuss the involvement of areas such as the amygdala, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex in the emotional processing and regulation of tears. Health benefits. Present studies that suggest health benefits of crying, such as its role in boosting the immune system, alleviating pain, and reducing stress, include a discussion on how tears might serve as a natural defense mechanism against bacterial infections due to the presence of lysozyme. 6. Tears in historical context. Ancient beliefs. Delve into how tears were interpreted in ancient civilizations, such as the role of weeping in Egyptian burial rites and the Greek concept of catharsis in tragedies. Include examples of how tears were seen as a medium to communicate with the divine. Medieval and Renaissance views. Explore the changing attitudes toward tears during the medieval and Renaissance periods. Discuss how religious doctrines, such as those of Christianity and Islam, influenced the perception of tears. 2. Gender and crying, a cultural and biological perspective. Hormonal influence. Expand on how hormones like oxytocin and prolactin contribute to emotional responses in crying, particularly in women. Include scientific studies that explore these hormonal influences and their impact on emotional sensitivity. Neurological differences. Discuss how neurological research has shown differences in brain activity between men and women during emotional experiences. Include studies on how the amygdala and prefrontal cortex function differently in processing emotions and regulating crying. Historical context. Provide historical examples of how gender roles have influenced the expression of emotions and crying. For instance, explore how ancient societies like Sparta or Rome viewed male crying, comparing it to cultures where male crying was seen as a sign of wisdom or spirituality. Cross-cultural analysis. Include a broader analysis of how different cultures perceive crying in men and women. For example, compare how Eastern and Western cultures approach emotional expression and provide anthropological insights into cultural norms around crying. 3. The psychology of tears, a deeper dive. Emotional triggers. Explore the range of emotions that can trigger tears, from frustration to elation, and how these responses are shaped by individual psychological makeup. Include findings from psychology on how crying serves as an emotional reset, helping to process and cope with complex feelings. Cognitive functions. Discuss how crying impacts cognitive processes such as memory, decision-making, and emotional regulation. Include examples from cognitive behavioral studies on how crying can influence mental health and emotional well-being. Tears as communication. Delve into the concept of tears as a form of non-verbal communication, particularly in situations where verbal expression is difficult or impossible. Include case studies showing how tears can evoke empathy and influence social interactions. Therapeutic aspects. Examine the role of crying in psychotherapy and its use in various therapeutic techniques. Include examples of how therapists use crying as a tool to help patients process trauma, grief, and other emotional difficulties. 4. Crying across cultures, a global perspective. Cultural variations. Provide a detailed look at how different cultures express and interpret crying. Include examples from indigenous cultures, Asian traditions, and African communities to highlight the diversity in the emotional significance and public perception of tears. Religious and spiritual practices. Explore the role of tears in religious and spiritual practices across various cultures. Discuss examples like the crying rituals in Sufi mysticism, the weeping statues in Catholic traditions, and the purification rituals in Hinduism and Buddhism. Cultural scripts and media representation. Discuss how cultural scripts dictate appropriate and inappropriate crying behaviors. Include an analysis of how modern media, films, and literature portray crying and its influence on societal attitudes towards emotional expression. Cultural evolution. Trace the historical evolution of attitudes toward crying in different societies. Discuss shifts from periods like the Stoic era in ancient Greece, where emotional restraint was valued, to the Romantic era, which celebrated emotional expressiveness. The Science of Tears, a deeper dive, biochemical composition, provide a detailed analysis of the biochemical composition of tears, including the presence of stress hormones, proteins, enzymes, and antibodies. Include research findings on how emotional tears differ chemically from reflex and basal tears. Neurological pathways. Delve into the neurological pathways involved in the act of crying. Include information on the role of neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine in regulating emotional states and how they influence tear production. Health benefits. Explore the potential health benefits of crying, including its effects on the immune system, pain relief, and emotional regulation. Include scientific studies that support the idea that crying can have a cathartic effect and contribute to overall well-being. Future research. Discuss emerging areas of research in the science of tears, such as the potential for using tear analysis in medical diagnostics and the study of emotional disorders. Tears in historical context. Ancient civilizations. Expand on how ancient civilizations like Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Greece viewed tears. Include myths and legends where tears played a significant role, such as the story of the goddess Isis in Egyptian mythology. Medieval and Renaissance views. Discuss how the medieval and Renaissance periods saw tears, particularly in religious contexts. Include an exploration of the role of tears in mysticism, such as the visions of Saint Teresa of Avila and other religious figures. Victorian era and modern times. Examine how the Victorian era romanticized the idea of tears as a sign of sensitivity and refinement, especially in women. Contrast this with modern views, where there is a growing acceptance of emotional expression regardless of gender. The role of tears in social and interpersonal dynamics, social bonding and empathy. Discuss how tears function in social bonding and empathy building. Include studies showing how observing someone cry can trigger empathic responses and the release of oxytocin in the observer. Conflict resolution. Explore how tears can play a role in conflict resolution, such as during reconciliation processes or in negotiations. Include examples from interpersonal psychology on how tears can serve as a nonverbal cue for vulnerability and honesty. Interpersonal communication. Provide insights into how tears influence interpersonal communication, including in intimate relationships and group dynamics. Include findings on how crying can affect trust, support, and social cohesion. Tears and creativity. Artistic inspiration. Explore how tears and emotional experiences have inspired artists, writers, and musicians throughout history. Include examples from literature, such as the works of Shakespeare or the poetry of Pablo Neruda, and discuss how these creators used the motif of tears to convey deeper emotional truths. Representation in art forms. Discuss how tears are depicted in visual arts, from ancient sculptures and Renaissance paintings to modern photography and cinema. Include an analysis of iconic works that feature crying figures and their cultural significance. Music and performance. Explore how tears are represented in music and performance art. Include examples from opera, theater, and contemporary music that use the imagery or concept of tears to evoke emotional responses in audiences. Contemporary perspectives on tears. Changing social attitudes. Discuss how modern society's attitudes toward crying are changing, with movements encouraging emotional openness and vulnerability. Include examples of public figures or movements that have helped destigmatize crying. Tears in therapy and mental health. Examine the role of tears in mental health and therapy, including how crying can be a part of healing processes. Include insights from therapists on how they encourage healthy emotional expression in clients. Gender and media representation. Analyze how the media portrays crying across genders and how this representation influences societal norms. Include examples from films, television, and social media, discussing both positive and negative portrayals. The future of tear research. Technological advances. Discuss emerging technologies in tear research, such as the use of biosensors and advanced imaging techniques to study tear composition and production. Include the potential for these technologies to provide new insights into emotional and physical health. Interdisciplinary approaches. Highlight the potential for interdisciplinary research combining biology, psychology, neuroscience, and anthropology to offer a more comprehensive understanding of tears. Applications in medicine and psychology. Explore the potential applications of tear research in medical diagnostics and psychological treatment. Include discussions on how tear analysis could be used to detect emotional disorders or stress-related conditions. Reflective thought. Embracing the power of tears. You've just journeyed through the intricate world of tears, uncovering their profound biological, psychological, and cultural significance. This exploration reveals how crying, a simple act that many of us take for granted or even try to suppress, is deeply woven into the fabric of what it means to be human. As you reflect on what you've learned, consider the following thoughts from a psychological and scientific perspective. Tears as emotional insight. Recognizing and understanding our tears can be a powerful tool for emotional insight. Psychologists often view crying as a natural process for processing emotions. The next time you find yourself on the verge of tears, take a moment to explore what those tears are communicating. Are they signaling a need for release, connection, or perhaps a response to something deeply meaningful? Embracing your tears as a form of self-awareness can lead to greater emotional intelligence and personal growth. The healing power of crying. Scientific studies suggest that crying can have therapeutic benefits, such as reducing stress and improving mood. By allowing ourselves to cry, we engage in a natural process of emotional regulation. This release can help lower levels of stress hormones like cortisol and promote the production of endorphins, our body's natural painkillers. So the next time you feel the need to cry, remember that it can be a step towards healing and self-care. Cultural acceptance and personal expression. Throughout this essay, we explored how cultural norms influence our attitudes toward crying. It's worth considering how these cultural scripts have shaped your own beliefs about emotional expression. Are you comfortable with your tears, or do you feel the need to hold them back? Embracing a healthier view of crying, one that recognizes it as a natural and valuable expression of emotion, can foster a more authentic connection with yourself and others. Encouraging emotional openness. By understanding the role of tears in human experience, we can cultivate empathy and compassion towards ourselves and others. In a world that often values stoicism and control, being open to tears can be an act of courage. It signals vulnerability, which is the foundation of genuine human connection. As you move forward, consider how you can create space for emotional openness in your life, whether it's through personal reflection, conversations with loved ones, or simply allowing yourself to feel without judgment. Continued exploration. This essay has only scratched the surface of what tears can teach us about ourselves and our relationships. If you're intrigued by the science and psychology of tears, consider exploring this topic further. Reading more about emotional regulation, attending a workshop on emotional intelligence, or even discussing your insights with a therapist or a support group can deepen your understanding and enhance your emotional well-being. Remember, tears are a natural part of the human experience, a reflection of our deepest emotions, and a testament to our capacity for empathy and connection. By embracing and understanding them, you take a step towards a more authentic and emotionally rich life. Tears, the unseen depths of human emotion. As we conclude this deep exploration into the world of tears, we come to understand that tears are far more than a simple physical response. They are a manifestation of our inner world, a reflection of the complex interplay between our biology, psychology, and cultural upbringing. Tears tell the story of our humanity. They reveal our capacity for deep emotion, our need for connection, and our unspoken dialogues with ourselves and others. Throughout history, tears have been a source of mystery and wonder. From ancient rituals to modern science, they have been examined, celebrated, and sometimes feared. Yet, they remain one of the most universal aspects of the human experience, a language that transcends words and cultural barriers. In our journey, we have seen how tears are not just about sadness or grief. They encompass the entire spectrum of human emotion: joy, relief, frustration, empathy, and even transcendence. They are a bridge between our inner selves and the world around us, a testament to our ability to feel deeply and connect with others on a profound level. As we continue to uncover the secrets of tears through scientific research, cultural study, and personal introspection, we are reminded of the beauty and complexity of being human. In every tear, there is a story, a silent whisper of the soul. By understanding the depth of this seemingly simple act, we can embrace a more profound appreciation for the richness of our emotional lives. Tears, in their quiet, unassuming way, invite us to look deeper into ourselves and the world around us. They remind us that to cry is to be human, to feel is to be alive, and to connect with others through our shared emotional experiences is to truly understand the essence of our existence.